My name is Claire. I'm 35 years old, and this isn't a story that begins with screaming, or shattered glass, or a dramatic confession at midnight. No. This story starts quietly, with a glass of wine. It was the company's anniversary party, the first one I had attended in over a year. My husband had practically begged me to go. "Come show them who really keeps me standing," he said with that half-charm, half-joke tone I used to fall for. So I did what good wives do. I smiled. I wore the burgundy dress he used to love. I let him hold my hand in front of his coworkers like nothing was broken between us. And I tried to believe that maybe, just maybe, we were still okay. The office was buzzing with polite laughter and expensive perfume. He drifted between conversations like a politician, firm handshake, practiced smile, fake laugh. And I, the quiet wife, stood near the drinks table, smiling at people whose names I barely remembered, wondering when I had become a stranger in his world. And then, she appeared. She wasn't stunning in the way magazines define beauty. But there was something undeniable about her presence, sharp, polished, like a woman who knew exactly who she was in every room she entered. She didn't offer her hand. She leaned in slightly and touched my shoulder, like we were old friends reconnecting. "You must be Claire," she said with a knowing smile. "I've heard so much about you." Her name was Emily. His new assistant. 6 months into the job. Everyone loved her. Fast, efficient, charming. She handed me a glass of red wine, already poured. "Cabernet," she said casually, like it meant nothing. "It's your favorite, right?" And that's when my heart paused. I smiled back, almost mechanically. "Yes, it is." "How did you know?" She laughed softly, without looking at me again. "Oh, he talks about you all the time." And just like that, she was gone. Off to mingle. Like she hadn't just punched a hole through the reality I thought I was standing in. I took a sip. And the wine, my wine, suddenly tasted like betrayal. That night, I watched him from across the room. Not in a jealous way, not yet. I was just noticing things. The way he looked at her when she walked by. Not like a man undressing a woman with his eyes. Worse than that. He looked comfortable. Familiar. Like he didn't need to hide anything anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel insecure. I felt replaced. Later, when we got home, I tried to bring her up casually. "So, Emily. She's nice." He didn't look up from his phone. "Yeah. Really on top of things. She gave me a Cabernet. Said it was my favorite." "Did you tell her that?" There was a pause, brief, but heavy. "I might have mentioned it," he said, then shrugged. "I don't know." But I knew something he didn't. I had never told him Cabernet was my favorite. The next morning, after he left for work, I opened his laptop. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But what I found was a shared calendar, hidden under an old project folder. Most of it looked normal. Meetings, deadlines, corporate things I didn't understand. Except for one. Every Thursday. 2 p.m. Blocked off. No title. Just a single letter, E. I stared at it for minutes, like the letter would confess if I waited long enough. That Thursday, I drove to his office. I told the receptionist I left something in his car. She smiled and waved me through. And there it was. On the passenger seat. A chilled bottle of Cabernet. Still sealed. I stood there, frozen, staring at it like it might speak. I turned my head slowly toward the glass wall of his office. The blinds were halfway closed, but not enough to hide her figure. She was laughing. He was leaning in, saying something. Something private. Something soft. I didn't go in. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't even cry. I just walked away, because in that exact moment, I knew. They weren't just having sex. They were rewriting my story together. My husband was giving her pieces of me. The parts one thought only he had. She wasn't stealing my place. She was wearing it. She knew my favorite wine. But I never met her. And that wasn't a coincidence. The thing about betrayal is that it never screams when it enters, it whispers. It tucks itself into the ordinary. It wears your perfume, borrows your smile, and slips between Thursdays like it belongs there. I didn't confront him right away. Some women throw plates. Others call friends and scream into wine glasses. Me? I turned silent. Observant. That kind of silence that drives people crazy because it doesn't beg, doesn't accuse, it just watches. Waits. Measures truth against tone. After that day at the office, after I saw the bottle on the seat and her laughter through the blinds, I didn't go home to fall apart. I went home to take inventory of my life, of my marriage, of what I had left of myself. I began collecting things. Not items, no. Details. Patterns. Words he repeated. Excuses that sounded too polished. I became a quiet archivist of my own pain. And Thursdays, those were sacred now. Not in the way Sundays used to be when we'd sleep in and make pancakes. No, sacred like a wound. Fresh every week. I followed him once. Just once. I told myself it wasn't stalking if you already knew what you were going to find. He left the office at 1:52. He wasn't rushing, he never did. He had the confidence of a man whose lie had turned into a routine. He drove to a hotel that looked like it hadn't been remodeled since 2003. Not sleazy. Not fancy. Just quiet. Hidden behind a car rental place and a sad-looking coffee shop. Room 214. He was in there for exactly 1 hour and 39 minutes. I sat in my car the entire time. No crying. No screaming. Just breathing, deeply, slowly, like I was prepping for a marathon I never wanted to run. He came out at 3:33 p.m. straightening his shirt. She came out 2 minutes later, adjusting her lipstick in the reflection of the hotel glass. I took a picture. Not because I needed proof, but because I needed something to hold on to when I started doubting myself again. That night, he kissed me on the forehead like he always did. Like the man who used to love me still lived inside him. "How was your day?" he asked. "Oh," I said, quiet, nothing special. And isn't that the tragedy? That I could lie just as smoothly as he did? The weeks passed, and I noticed something worse than the affair itself. He was getting happier. Lighter. As if cheating had unclenched something in his chest. He laughed more. Played music in the kitchen again. Touched me like he remembered how, only now, I couldn't tell if it was out of guilt or habit. Maybe both. And Emily, she became bolder. At events, she stood closer to him. Her hand brushed his arm a second too long. She said things like, "Oh, you'd be surprised what your husband gets up to on Thursdays," and then looked at me with that grin, that sharp, slow grin of a woman who knows exactly what she's doing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip her apart with words. But instead, I smiled back. I matched her pause, her tone, her smugness. Because while she thought she was winning him, I was busy planning the end of their game. I started preparing a folder. Nothing dramatic. Just methodical. Screenshots of texts he sent me where timelines didn't match. Credit card charges. The hotel photo. Notes of phrases he reused, the same compliments he once gave me now handed to her, recycled, emptied of soul. And then one day, I heard a voicemail. Not meant for me. He had borrowed my phone for a second, returned it without logging out of his work line. 10 minutes later, it rang. I don't know what made me answer. Her voice came through, soft and breathy. Hey. I'm still thinking about this afternoon. You always smell like her shampoo after we're together. It's kind of twisted, but I like it. I stood there, phone pressed against my ear, every bone in my body suddenly cold. He was using my shampoo. She knew it. And she liked it. I should have broken then. But no. That was the moment I decided. I wouldn't just catch them. I would make them remember me. Not as the wife who cried. Not as the fool they thought I was. But as the woman who stayed quiet long enough to build the storm. The next Thursday, I cooked his favorite dinner, roast chicken, garlic potatoes, green beans with lemon zest, just like he liked. I wore the soft blue dress he once said made me look like summer. We sat. We talked. We laughed. And when he went to the bathroom, I slipped the envelope into his briefcase. No name. No message. Just pictures. Dates. Receipts. Transcripts. A silent bomb, ticking in his hands. He never said a word about it. But the next Thursday, he didn't go to the hotel. And the Thursday after that, he came home early. Flowers. Wine. A movie I loved queued up on the screen. Just felt like staying in, he said. But I wasn't smiling anymore. Because I knew something he didn't. I had already started writing my goodbye. And he? He was already losing a war I hadn't even declared yet. My name is still Anna. I'm still 35. But I'm not the same woman who once believed Thursday nights were just about work dinners and late meetings. I'm not the woman who smiled politely when his phone lit up with her name saved as logistics. I'm not even the woman who sat in a parking lot, watching the man I married emerge from a hotel with another woman's perfume clinging to his collar. That woman is gone. And what replaced her is something quieter, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. By the time the dinner happened, I had already memorized their entire routine. Her apartment was 6 blocks from his office. She worked late most nights, or so her calendar said. But I knew when she left early. I knew the name of the Italian place where they sometimes met after hours, a dim little place with no cameras in the parking lot and a blind spot near the bar. I even knew the waitress who'd been serving them. Not that she knew who I was. I introduced myself as a potential event planner, looking to host a corporate dinner. She was young, friendly, a little too talkative. She mentioned the handsome guy with the deep voice who came in every other week with a woman who was definitely not his wife. It took everything in me not to flinch. I went home that night and opened a fresh notebook. Page 1, I wrote the date I married him. Underneath it, I drew a line across the page. A timeline. On the left, moments that meant something to me, our anniversary, the night he held our dog when she passed, the night he said I was everything good in his world. On the right, the truth. The nights he wasn't really at the gym. The weekend he came home with a hotel key card still in his coat pocket. The Valentine's Day he gave me roses, red ones, but later I found the receipt for another bouquet, pink tulips. Emily's favorite. I wrote it all down. Because sometimes, when you're gaslit long enough, you need your own handwriting to remind you you're not insane. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning a performance. It started with a simple message to his assistant. I wanted to throw a dinner party, something elegant, professional, intimate. A thank you dinner, I called it, for his most loyal employees. She loved the idea. She even offered to help coordinate. I told her I'd handle it. All of it. I rented a private room in a glass-walled rooftop restaurant. The kind with candles flickering in glass globes, and white tablecloths that looked too clean to ever be used twice. I invited just 6 people, carefully chosen. His top 2 managers. A close friend from his college days. And, of course, Emily. I needed her there. I told him it was a surprise celebration. I said I'd meet him there, already dressed, already glowing. The day of the dinner, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I didn't want to look vengeful. I wanted to look untouchable. I wore the red dress he used to love, the one with the low back and soft satin sleeves. I curled my hair loosely, like I used to when we first dated. When I was still a mystery to him. Before he thought he could lie to me and get away with it. I arrived early and spoke to the staff. Everything had to go exactly as I planned. Wine poured before they sat down. Phones politely collected at the entrance to encourage connection. The manager nodded. He was discreet. They arrived one by one. Emily was the last. She wore black. Tight, sleek, too much perfume. She smiled when she saw me, and that smile faltered just a second when she realized I was standing at the head of the table, not him. She sat across from me, her eyes scanning the room like a woman searching for an exit that didn't exist. When he finally walked in, he froze. He wasn't expecting candles. He wasn't expecting guests. And he definitely wasn't expecting me to be the one holding the wine glass, welcoming everyone with the kind of poise that looks rehearsed but isn't. "Darling," I said, motioning to the empty chair beside me. "You made it just in time." He sat. Slowly. Like his legs were remembering how. I stood. "I just want to thank you all," I began, my voice smooth, warm, even affectionate. "You've been a part of his journey, and that means you've been a part of mine." They smiled. Toasted. Then I set my glass down and reached into my purse. I thought tonight we could play a little game. Something simple. Truth and trust. There was a small envelope for each of them. On the front, their names. Inside, a letter. A carefully crafted message about loyalty, honesty, and choices. His letter, though, his was different. He opened it. Read it. And I watched the color drain from his face. He folded it back too neatly, too slowly. I turned to Emily. "How's the Cabernet? Still your favorite, isn't it?" She blinked. "You knew that?" she asked, her voice smaller now. I smiled. "Of course. I always know what he likes." There was a silence then. The kind that eats sound. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the candles seemed to flicker quieter. "I used to wonder what it would take for a man to risk everything," I said. "Now I know. It's not passion. It's not love. It's entitlement. The belief that no one is watching." I reached for my bag again, but this time, I didn't pull out letters. I pulled out keys. Don't worry. I'm not here to make a scene. I already moved out. The papers are signed. You'll find the apartment keys, his office pass, and the ring I wore for 10 years, all in there. I looked at him one last time. I hope she was worth it, I said softly. And then I turned to Emily. I hope you enjoy Thursdays. I walked out before anyone could respond. Before he could beg. Before she could lie. And as I stepped into the elevator, alone, heels clicking against the marble, I felt something unexpected. Not revenge. Not triumph. Just peace. Heavy. Earned. Real. The kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop pretending. The dinner wasn't meant to be about closure. It wasn't even about punishment. It was a funeral. For the woman I used to be. My name is still Anna. 35. Divorced now. But you know what I realized, after everything? You don't actually need the apology to heal. You just need to know, it wasn't your fault. It's strange how the quiet creeps in after the storm. For days after the dinner, I expected noise. Anger. Phone calls. Drama. But instead, there was nothing. Just silence. Like even the universe needed a moment to process what had happened. He didn't chase me. He didn't call. Not that night. Not the next. And then one morning, he did. I let it ring the first time. And the second. But by the third, I answered. Not because I wanted to hear his excuses, I had already heard them all before. I just wanted to hear his voice when he realized he couldn't twist the narrative anymore. That the version where I was fragile, naive, blind, didn't fit me now. Anna, he said. Just my name. Like it still belonged to him. I didn't speak. I let him fill the silence. I knew he would. I don't know where to start. I wanted to laugh. But I didn't. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. It was just supposed to be a distraction. I didn't love her. I don't. You know that, right? He was unraveling. His voice cracked in places it never had before. I think I messed up everything, he whispered. And there it was, the apology. Not quite formed, not quite full. But a ghost of it. I took a slow breath. You didn't just mess up a marriage, I said quietly. You rewrote it behind my back. He said my name again. Like that would fix it. Like repetition could undo the betrayal. I just want to talk. I don't, I replied. And I hung up. I expected that to feel triumphant. Like some kind of win. But it didn't. It just felt final. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No envelope. Just folded once and left with the doorman. His handwriting looked rushed. Uneven. He said he was sorry. Said he'd been selfish. Said he missed the way I breathed when I slept. The way I added cinnamon to his coffee even though he always told me not to. Said he missed the way I made the house feel like a home. He called me his center. Said he didn't realize what that meant until he lost it. There was a time I would have cried over that letter. Held it close to my chest. Read it 3 times before bed. Let it convince me to give him one more chance. But not anymore. Because you know what I realized? The apology didn't change what he did. It didn't change the nights he left me wondering why I wasn't enough. It didn't erase the look on her face when she realized I knew. It didn't change the way my body trembled when I found out. The apology was for him, not for me. It was a release valve. A way to soften the guilt. But I wasn't interested in softening anything anymore. I moved into a small apartment a few miles from the city. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. All of it. From the squeaky drawers to the chipped blue kettle I found at a flea market. I started painting again. Nothing serious. Just shapes and colors and emotions I couldn't put into words. I let the music play loud. I let the candles burn too long. I bought wine that I liked, not the one we used to share. I stopped checking my phone at night. I started remembering how silence can also mean peace, not just absence. Emily? She called me once. I didn't answer. She sent a message. It simply said, I didn't know how deep it went. I'm sorry. I deleted it. There was nothing to say. I wasn't going to waste forgiveness on people who never earned it. But here's the twist I didn't expect. It wasn't anger that helped me heal. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. The kind that only comes when you stop asking why, and start asking what's next. One night, maybe a month after the dinner, I sat on my balcony, barefoot, wine in hand. There was a breeze, soft and steady, brushing against my cheek like a whisper from the future. And I remember smiling, not because everything was perfect, but because I had survived something I once thought would break me. He took years from me. She stole my Thursdays. But I took something back they never expected. Myself. Whole. Wiser. Still standing. No, I didn't get a grand apology. No begging at my door. No monologue of regret in the rain. But I got something better. I got free. And to anyone out there who's been broken like I was, let me tell you something. You don't need them to say sorry. You don't need them to explain. You don't need them to come back. You just need to remember who you were before the lie. And then become something even stronger than that. Because healing doesn't begin when they apologize. It begins the moment you decide they don't get to define you anymore. If you've ever felt shattered by someone who swore they'd never hurt you, and still, you found the strength to rise again. I see you. I was you. And I'm still here. Candle comment if this story found you at the right time. Like it if you breathed a little deeper by the end. And share it if you know someone who needs to be reminded they don't need the apology to begin again. My name is Anna, and this is where my story ends. But maybe it's where yours begins.